I'm going to be talking about various dry cat foods today. Now, of course, dry foods, for various reasons, are not ideal. I do not recommend them. I recommend minimizing or avoiding them. But they are on the market. They are pushed. And well, I think the fact that they are pushed is the biggest problem. I'm going to focus today on what's called veterinary or prescription foods. And of course, those terms are meaningless. Yeah, you only need to, buy them through your vet or get a prescription because the food company wants it that way. And they charge a great deal of money for these foods. And, well, frankly, they're not worth it. And of course, we have Hills doing their "Science Did That" commercials, as if science is somehow automatically good and perfect and wonderful, and in reality, it's only as good as the people doing the work and the company, and how ethical or not the company may be. Going to get to all of that. First, I do need to say this is the Hyperthyroid Cats channel. A lot of the information, and particularly with food, does apply to cats of any type, hyperthyroid or not. I'm Forrest Poston. I'm not a vet. However, there is some chance that I do know what I'm talking about. Or even if I don't know what I'm talking about, there's still a chance I might be right. Maybe a bit wrong, but on food, all right, I think there are some points to be made here. So let's get to it. Oh, no, I do need to say again, please subscribe, share, make comments, click the thumbs up, click the notification bell, and tell your friends, because all of that helps me get these videos out to more people. And if I get up to enough watch hours, I can actually do things like put a little button there asking you to donate. And yeah, I do need to do that. Boy, do I need to do that. Now, I'm going to start, kind of work my way up through the lower quality foods and then get to those high-priced prescription veterinary foods. A couple of the specialized foods. And of course, I'm not going to go through all of the ingredients. I'm just going to try to hit on a few key points. And I'm starting with pretty near the bottom end food. This is your basic cheap supermarket food, less than $1 a pound. And you look at the initial ingredients. We start with ground yellow corn, corn gluten meal, chicken byproduct meal, which that's not meat, soybean meal, beef tallow. That's as close to meat as we've gotten. Now, do eventually work down to a couple of types of fish meal. They are so low on the list that they're basically it's a pinch, maybe. Now, the things to notice. Now, of course, loaded with grains, and the science they use tells you, well, the cats can digest these grains, which is sort of true once the grains are sufficiently processed, and how much of the nutritional value is left is a bit of a question after that. But grains are much higher in carbs than meat. Cats can handle carbs. They don't need carbohydrates. Their need for carbohydrates is zero. They can handle them. That is a big difference from they need them. And just like me, Too many carbs for too long, whether you can handle them or not, becomes a problem. And that problem is often called diabetes. Gluten. That's another cheap ingredient. And I say, hey, loaded with protein, it's digestible. And I looked at a veterinary clinic site, and their argument was, well, people say, hey, I may have trouble with gluten. How can my cat digest it? The cats, were wild creatures. And, yeah, well, this vet site says, well, um, we're domesticated and so are cats. And the implication being that having been domesticated for a fair amount of time, that cats have automatically changed internally. Well, they haven't. In the wild, cats were obligate carnivores, and they still are. The biology of cats has changed very little since they've been domesticated. Dogs actually changed a good bit. Dogs domesticated first and more fully, perhaps. And cats are more stubborn. But cats are obligate carnivores right now. The cats in your house, long line of domesticated, cats, they are obligate carnivores. What that means, it's a very specialized group. They're not just carnivores, they are obligate carnivores. Meat is their need. It's what they handle best. It's what they use to build muscle mass. So they can digest grains, they can digest glutens, but that doesn't mean they should. All right, a couple other things to notice. Very high on the list, we get phosphoric acid. And, well, just as it sounds, it's there to acidify the food because these ingredients are far, far, far too alkaline, which means the pH on a urinalysis would be too high. 6.0 to 6.5 is really what you're shooting for on the pH. 7 starts getting iffy. 7.5 is too high. 8, you're in trouble. And a high alkaline urine increases the risk of urinary infections and crystals, stones, blockage, trouble. So you really, really want pH 6.0, 6.5 for most cats. Cats are weird, they do vary. And they add an acidifier to these foods to try and get things in range. It doesn't work as well as just starting with ingredients that maintain a naturally proper pH. And, well, that ingredient is meat. Meat contains methionine, which keeps the pH where it needs to be. It's pretty simple. And adding the acidifiers just does not tend to work as well as starting with food that doesn't need the addition. Now, in this case, there is no taurine listed in the ingredients, which could be good or bad. Taurine is essential, utterly essential. And having extra can be a good thing, usually not a bad thing. But most of the lower priced or problematic foods add taurine because, well, it's naturally found in meat. If there's not enough meat in the food, there's probably not enough taurine, so they add taurine. The fact that it's not in this really low-priced food with lots of grains kind of bothers me because I don't see enough of anything in there to figure that there's enough taurine. when you do see taurine in the ingredients, it's usually the same as an acidifier. It's telling you that there's not enough meat. They're compensating instead of doing it right to begin with. But you expect that from the cheap food. Okay, comes under the heading of you get what you pay for, which is how it's kind of supposed to work. Now, step up to what I would call sort of a mid-range dry food. It's not one of the best, not one of the worst, but notice right off the bat, starts with deboned chicken and chicken meal. Now then you drop into pea protein, peas, tapioca starch, and then you get into other plant-based foods, vitamin supplements, that sort of thing. DL-methionine. Well, it's not phosphoric acid, but it is an acidifier. And it is a synthetic form of methionine. Now, I don't know if the problem is that the synthetic form just doesn't work as well as the natural form, or if they just can't add enough to get these foods up to where they need to be. But when you see DL-methionine, you can generally say the food doesn't have as much meat as it should. And, well, with dry foods, you usually assume, even if meat's the first ingredient, it probably doesn't have enough. And extra taurine. Now, maybe they're just kind of covering themselves. Maybe it means there's really not enough meat. Now, in theory, these ingredients are in the order, that shows percentage of, the ingredient in the food. Lots of different ways they can kind of fudge that, so it's not entirely reliable. But if deboned chicken is the first ingredient, there should be more deboned chicken than there is any other individual ingredient. But of course, when you add up all of those plant ingredients, it can be more than what the first ingredient adds up to. If you were going to use a dry food, that one wouldn't be too bad. Carb level is still going to be much too high, but not as high as the really cheap food. Now, comparison, this food was generally considered one of the best dry foods, as good as a dry food can get. The company was bought out about 2 years ago, so there's some question as to how long the quality will hold up. But you look at the ingredients: or chicken, turkey, whole herring, turkey giblets, salmon, dehydrated chicken, dehydrated turkey, dehydrated salmon, dehydrated chicken liver. Then we get to egg, lentils, beans, that sort of thing. We still have a ton of plant ingredients. But with that many meat ingredients first, you should be looking at primarily meat. And I do think this one claims, specifically, a high percent of, I think they say animal ingredients, which can include any part of the body, but a lot of it turns out to be meat, not byproduct. And there's no taurine, there's no acidifier. So either they got it wrong or they got it right, but it should be a good food. Now, comparison. This food it's listed as a urinary food, but it is not a veterinary or prescription food. You can walk into a regular store and get it. Or not. But here, look at the ingredients. Corn gluten meal, ground yellow corn, chicken, third ingredient, brewer's rice, wheat flour, animal fat, and animal fat does not count as meat. And let's see, we got the taurine, we've got phosphoric acid, so okay, there's not enough meat in this food. How is this, well, first of all, how is this a good food? How is this food priced higher than the cheap food I read? It's very close to the same ingredients. It's got many of the same problems. And brewer's rice, okay, that's not just rice. Brewer's rice, what is it? It's leftover. Brewer's rice is what's left after rice gets milled. It's little pieces of rice. It's the hulls. What percentage of it is really rice? You don't know. It's questionable nutritionally, and it's got to be cheap. I mean, the food companies are just, essentially taking this off the hands of the milling companies. Otherwise they're just going to toss it, or it's going to be feed or nothing. So this is not a high quality food that you really want to go look for. Now, I said, what makes it urinary? One possibility is adding more phosphoric acid. Acidify it more to get the pH into the proper level, and you decrease the risk of crystals and stones, and possibly have the chance of eliminating them if it's only a slight problem. The level of salt might be higher, and that might or might not get a cat to drink more. Now, I mentioned that keeping the pH in the 6.0 to 6.5 range is one critical factor in dealing with urinary issues or preventing them. The other is water intake. Proper water intake, keep the system flowing, keep it balanced, and you're just not likely to get urinary issues. But cats started as desert creatures, and again, very stubborn. They in their origins, they were used to getting almost all of their liquid from what they ate, and a lot of them haven't changed that much. A lot of cats just don't drink much water, and that can remain true even if you add salt. So you're better off concentrating on increasing water intake by using a good moist food rather than trying to force the cat to drink enough water to compensate for the dryness of the food. But I mean, there's really nothing on the ingredient list that is nutritionally special. It's basically sort of compensation and tricks. It might actually correct a minor urinary problem, might, and minor. But how it does it is iffy. It's not really treating the root of the problem. So the fact that it might work is just not good enough. Now, there is a system called RSS for judging whether or not a food should help. And this method checks the saturation levels of certain ingredients in the food, things like magnesium, I believe. Some of the things that tend to be found in stones if they occur. And the theory is, well, if we minimize the levels of those elements, we prevent stones and crystals. Well, once again, saturation levels are a matter of that element relative to how much liquid water is in the system. So rather than just trying to decrease the levels of these elements, some of which actually are good, why not increase the water? You get the same relative result. The amount of liquid is higher than the amount of these elements. So they do not become what they call super saturated. Water is good. Cats often don't drink enough of it if it's not in their food, so maybe it should be in their food. Now you also, this, let's see. Didn't check to see if this one has taurine or not. Yep, there it is, taurine, and of course the phosphoric acid. So it might help with the urinary, but it's not good food. Now, finally getting to the point. Yay, I hope you've watched this long. This first one is a veterinary urinary food. It costs close to $8 a pound. So it's basically 8 times the cheap food. Ingredients: chicken byproduct meal. And remember, byproduct can be dang near anything. Now, some definitions make it sound pretty good, but just in terms of any legal requirement for what the food companies have to mean by this, nothing. All it really means is it's not meat. This is not chicken. This is the parts of the chicken other than meat. Brewer's rice, we covered that one. Number 2 ingredient is essentially a filler, a cheap filler, a byproduct. Corn gluten meal, chicken fat, wheat gluten, natural flavors, whatever that means, wheat, salt, powdered cellulose. You notice there's no meat. Zero. There's no meat. Now we do have, let's see here. We've got taurine and DL-methionine, obviously, because there's no meat. Now again, this food, well, you notice it sounds a whole lot like the cheap food. It's got chicken byproduct meal instead of an actual grain as the first ingredient, but it's not meat. We have after that's followed by 1, 2, 3, then we get chicken fat. I mean, we've got, I think, 5 plant-based ingredients in the top, 7 ingredients. That's ridiculous. Where is the $8 a pound value? It's the same trick. Adding more acidifier, adding probably more salt, and possibly controlling the levels of things like magnesium, going with the RSS system. So decreasing the levels of these minerals and such that might actually be doing something good for the body instead of increasing water intake. $8 a pound for that. They want to call this a special diet. They want to tell you that these ingredients are at least fine, if not good, for obligate carnivores. And you know, chicken byproduct, brewer's rice, which is a byproduct, corn gluten meal, chicken fat, wheat gluten, wheat. Those aren't expensive ingredients. Those are not special ingredients. There is no science in this, and actually this is not a Hills product. I don't want to mislead you. Some of the Hills products are better, some are worse. But I really think this, if I had the time and money, I would probably file a class action lawsuit. Because this is pretty darn near fraud to call this a special food. Then we get a hydrolyzed food. Now this is supposed to make the protein more digestible. As when cats are having allergic reactions to foods, this is one of the things too many vets will go to because the cat's allergic to the proteins. They don't say, hey, maybe the food itself is crappy and we need to use a higher quality, cleaner food. No, we do hydrolyzed. This one is more expensive. It's more expensive than the $8 a pound food. And the first ingredient is brewer's rice, a dirt cheap, nutritionally questionable ingredient is number one, and they charge you extra for that. Second ingredient, hydrolyzed soy protein. Well, that ain't meat. It's been specially processed to make it digestible. Now, again, nutritionally, I don't know what that does to it. It may still be okay. Brewer's rice, not so much. Now, soy is a bit of a problem. Soy can disrupt thyroid function. They haven't studied it specifically in cats, but soy can be an issue. It is possible for cats to have a mild T4 thyroid spike. And food ingredients are one of the probable causes. Soy is on that list. And here it is, hydrolyzed soy protein, and they're charging you extra for that. Then we get to chicken fat, powdered cellulose, natural flavors, and again, that covers a whole heck of a lot of territory. And beet pulp, and again, zero meat, D-L-methionine, very high on the list. I assume taurine is on there someplace. I forgot to mark it. But that food, that's not cat food. That's not cat food. That's not human food. When you start with brewer's rice, that's not even necessarily food, since we don't know exactly what is in a batch of brewer's rice. There are better ways to deal with most of these problems. And usually they're cheaper than these veterinary prescription foods. And the thing you got to remember is most or all of the information about food that reaches your vets, starting in veterinary school, is controlled by the food companies. They do the studies, they design the studies. Oddly enough, the studies almost always get the result the food companies want. And the food companies spend a great deal of money promoting these foods to the vets the same way they do with commercials trying to promote them to us. I have, under certain circumstances, used urinary foods or some other special foods temporarily. It didn't work. Didn't work at all. Um, but like I say, in some cases they will, and not just with urinary, I mean, some of the special foods will make a problem go away. But that's not good enough. That's, I mean, if you are getting rid of a problem or hiding a problem, and the cost is causing a problem, that's not worth it. With any of these situations, you try to work at the root of the problem. As urinary issues, control the pH, increase water intake, and then, there are some other things that can be done if necessary. And given how strange cats are, sometimes, yeah, you do everything right and there's still a problem, so you have to take extra, extra actions. But I would not put a prescription veterinary food on my list of top options. Sometimes maybe last ditch options, but there are a lot of better ways to handle it. Sometimes they are herbal, holistic. A lot of the alternative-ish things work. And a lot of it is just good quality food, which for cats starts with good quality meat. Not meat that has been sitting someplace for too long, not meat that comes from animals that were rather sick, just good quality meat, good moisture content, minimal fillers. That will prevent or cure most of these problems. And even a good quality raw food ends up being cheaper than these special foods. Now, don't take my word for it. Study. I mean, if you go online, you will find lots of information, and this will contradict that, and the other contradicts this one. You need to sort it out. But remember, obligate carnivore. That's the thing. Cats were obligate carnivores. Cats are obligate carnivores. Cats will be obligate carnivores. They should be treated and fed as such. It's science. It's pretty basic. And as far as the whole grain stuff, basic philosophy for most of life, just because you can doesn't mean you should. All right. Food and philosophy, you got them both. I appreciate you coming by. Please subscribe, share, comment, click the thumbs up button, click the notification bell, tell your friends. I hope what you tell them is a positive thing. All right. I've got a lot more to do, and I got cats to feed. So long.